So I'll just get started. So I think, as everyone knows, and as Lydia introduced me, I'm CEO at Canoe Wales, but previous to my role with Canoe Wales, I was working at the RWA as Director of Sport Development, and effectively that was head of volunteer management and engagement. And the RWA at the time was starting to see a decrease of volunteers through sailing clubs, and a lot of sailing clubs were coming forward to the RWA and wanting support in this area. So we launched into well, quite a bit of research and a number of research projects to try and find out what was going on in volunteering. And what we found is there's some general societal trends that are affecting volunteering generally across the world, not just isolated here to the UK, but also there were some specific challenges within sailing clubs that actually I think are very relevant for a lot of sport clubs, particularly water sports clubs. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about that too. So some of the things that I guess we hear, and definitely I hear when at different clubs, is people have changed. They just don't have the time or enthusiasm that they used to. Can't get people motivated to take on any duties. Young people nowadays want anything on a plate, which means always taking something out, not putting anything back in. Same old people time and time again, so much so they inevitably burn out and get bitter. Nobody turns up to committee meetings. How can you get anything done or agreed or something else? Does that resonate with anyone on the calls? Anyone? Any other experiences? I guess that's not the case everywhere, but I think there definitely is some challenges in volunteering. So this is about just trying to understand what's going on there under the surface. So we'll talk about a bit about the world of volunteering, what's changes, some theories that might help explain that. With that in mind, how can we refine our volunteer management practices and hopefully give you some tools to take away? So just very quickly, just to give you an example. So we've got, excuse me a second, I'll just pull this across. So we've got two people, both very active within their clubs, Dave and Karen, and also both desperate volunteers for the up and coming season. Dave, an experienced volunteer manager from a decade before, has filled an entire roster for the club before, albeit 10 years ago. He knows exactly what to do. He gets to work outlining job descriptions, expectations, and starts to advertise through the monthly newsletter. He reminds the club how important it is to volunteer, and duties are duties and must be performed. He also starts to pick up the phone and ring around. When people ask what's involved in committee duties, he's very clear about expectations, monthly meetings lasting up to about 3 hours, more duties on the weekend, being around at the annual family camp and other weekend events. When people ask what's in it for them, he says a chance to give back to the club, and without volunteers, the club would cease to run. Then we've got Karen. She takes a very different approach. She starts to think about what needs to be done rather than positions that need to be filled. She decides the youth area of the website desperately needs refresh and a working booking form for youth activity. She knows of a member is a web developer, calls him for a chat. She asks him for some advice on how to go about it and whether he'd like to meet up to take her through it. He agrees, and before you know it, he's agreed to overhaul the website. She then thinks through what needs to be done to administer the youth program. She asks around if anyone's got any experience of online booking forms, and here's of someone who runs a local mums group and manages all the events online. She approaches her and asks to know more. Before she knows it, she's agreed to run the bookings for the youth program through the summer. After a couple of months, Karen's managed to fill the youth team with eager, keen volunteers, while Dave is still sending out threatening emails and getting more and more angry. Why won't Dave's approach that worked 10 years ago work anymore? What's changed? Any suggestions at all? Any ideas? No? Okay. Effectively what has changed, of course, is society's changed. And, when we look across generations, a lot of time we talk about sort of younger generations and the impact of sort of Gen Y and Gen Z. actually all generations have changed, and there'd be societal impacts all over the place. And when we look at the kind of general needs and wants across those different societal groups, actually, when we look at volunteering, we can start to see how that's impacting the time and their propensity and the way they volunteer. So, funnily enough, the kind of methods of managing volunteering that we used sort of 10, 15 years or 20 years ago won't work in today's world, because there's been some systemic differences in the way people live their lives. And there's a really good book that helps to really distill this. It's called The New Breed of Volunteer. And I think if you're a volunteer coordinator in your club, it's really worth purchasing. It's an American book, so it's a bit, very American in the way they talk about it. And it's father and son, but they talk about how to manage volunteering in today's world. And you can see, I won't go through them, but you can see some of the influences on volunteering there just on the right hand side of the slide, which impacts the way that we need to manage volunteers. And of course, managing can be anything from recruiting volunteers to actually retaining volunteers and rewarding volunteers. But yeah, the new breed of volunteer, very busy, wants flexibility, expects to be empowered, won't tolerate working alongside incompetent volunteers, tech savvy, doesn't just want to make a contribution, they want to make a difference, and doesn't want to be micromanaged. So some real things there to think about in today's kind of volunteers. Ooh. So again, because time's short, I'm happy to share the slides afterwards, but this impacts everything we do around volunteering. And if we use the kind of 4-part process of volunteer management, first one is recruitment. People won't come forward as much to adverts as they would in the past. So that kind of personal touch or reaching out to people who may have a specific skill or experience in a certain area is much more successful than just putting out job advert or role adverts and similar. So that kind of personal touch is definitely something to think about. Strategic recruiting, people are much more fearful as well of long-term commitments. So think about kind of short-term project teams. Assuming that no means not now or not in this position. So just trying to be flexible around the person that you're trying to recruit. Roles and responsibilities or position charters for each position. Specific people for specific roles, and even within your club have a volunteer manager who can really support your volunteers and get the best out of them. All really good ideas. And then the retain and reward, discovering what motivates volunteers, regular feedback, privileges or perks, conferences. I suppose that's really respecting the fact that volunteers want to learn, they want to develop in their position. So things like conferences or ways that they can learn and develop is really important. Vocational training, questions, concerns, absolutely. So being there for the volunteers. Things like free food, public affirmations, tangible incentives, and also just fun. Really having fun when volunteering is really important. Okay, any questions so far? I can see something in the chat. Oh no, yeah, we're okay. Fantastic. Does that any comments at all on any of that? Any reflections? No, I was very quiet this evening, but no, we'll carry on. So the next thing really is to then talk a little bit about the impact of COVID-19. So clearly we're still recovering, and particularly clubs I know of absolutely been organisations that have had significant challenges, of course, going through COVID-19, but of course now coming out the back of it, things have changed. Some of your volunteers will have moved on, and you're just really trying to get things back up and running. So just to kind of give you hopefully a little bit of a positive feeling that you're not in it alone. So this is some fairly recent Sport England research, and there's lots of lines within this line chart here, but principally the message to take away is this top line, the 16%, is clubs within the sports sector in England who've reported back on their volunteers currently volunteering in the same role and the same way that they did previous to COVID-19. So all of these other lines are people changing their volunteering habits, some slightly up here, but some dramatically down here. So I guess the thing to take away from this is, 4 out of 5 or 84% of volunteers within the sports sector in England. Wales are getting there with their volunteer research, but I think it's a good comparison. But 4 out of 5 volunteers are changing the way that they volunteer post COVID-19. So that's really interesting to see. And some of the ways that they would like to change are, some fairly similar to kind of what has come through the new breed of volunteer book. So flexible opportunities. These two are kind of COVID related, less time consuming opportunities, communication, opportunities to learn or be trained, practical tools and resources. So you can see there some of those tips coming, from the book coming in there from the COVID-19. So yeah, that's some interesting stuff. The other bit I'm going to talk about is a project that we did. We started it in 2018 within the RWA, looking at volunteering within sailing clubs. So we contracted an insight and data or evidence company called Revealing Reality, who really get good at getting under the skin of challenges like volunteering. So they wouldn't just go out and collect data, they would actually go interview, sit down, really get to know the problem and what was going on. And they came back with some really interesting analysis on this issue. The first one, which wasn't as surprising, is volunteering was unfairly distributed within sailing clubs in this context. So 62% of volunteer duties was carried out by 20% of members. So yeah, absolutely unfairly distributed, which again probably isn't a surprise at all. But actually, when you sort of look at this, and you equate that out, that's 172 people completing a combined total of 7,556 duties, or an average of 62 pretty much duties each. So yeah, it's once you start to think about, look and use the data and put it out like that, it's quite a lot. However, 47% of members wanted to contribute more to their club. So there was a kind of mismatch there. So they went to look at why that 47% weren't able and what was blocking them. Now, this was quite an interesting slide and piece of insight, but what they proposed was potentially some highly committed volunteers were actually a barrier to new volunteers, and they proposed that there was this sort of vicious circle going on. So as a small number of people do the majority of the jobs, take ownership or pride, too busy doing the job to embrace less experienced volunteers, leaves new other members feeling not needed or too inexperienced to help, task owners perceive no one is helping them, and entrench in a narrative that's all down to them. So that kind of vicious circle, potentially in some sailing clubs in this instance, was a real blocker or barrier to new volunteers coming in. So of course it's important for those volunteers to really invest in the new volunteers and make sure they're supported when learning new tasks or volunteering within the club. But they also linked volunteering with the motivation of a member to be in a club. So what they found was that some clubs were more focused around one of these 4 motivators, if you like. than others, and members principally were more motivated for one of these four than others. And when a member, for example, was more interested in community, but the club was more interested in sport, there was a mismatch. And it basically meant that member was less motivated and therefore less likely to volunteer. Motivation is clearly important, but also the ability was really important. So they looked at easy admin to sign up for volunteer, good communication from the club to the potential volunteer, and then skills and also training provision was also really important. And they came up with this diagram, which looks pretty complicated, but actually it's fairly simple. Effectively, the higher the motivation around all of those four, the higher the ability, the more likely the member is going to be in this sort of green area of this box, and therefore the prompt for that member to volunteer would be successful. Whereas if they're down here with a low ability, low motivation, it's likely to be unsuccessful. So yeah, just quite an interesting way of sort of thinking about increasing the ability, but also increasing the motivation, and therefore they're more likely to motivate. There are also some barriers. I'm not going to read through, just conscious of time, but internal tensions, transactional view of membership within clubs, and also not knowing how they could get involved. So yeah, some barriers there to potential volunteers becoming volunteers. And then simply and a simple way of thinking about volunteering is thinking about motivations of your members, then barriers, and then maximize motivations and minimize barriers. Great. Okay, I'm just going to fly through now. I'll just talk a little bit, just very quickly, about, and we can give examples of these. The tools that they gave at the end of this research were essentially sort of tick lists for club committees or similar to use. So firstly, about about the motivations. So just some kind of I suppose scorecards, not in any way for us or for anybody else to kind of score the club, but just for a club committee to take away and just think about are there some opportunities here to increase the motivation of certain potential volunteers. Same with barriers. Just look through those and have, as a committee, just kind of think through those. And it just might help, just think, where within our club could we focus, or as a committee, either through the motivations, either through the ability or some of these barriers, to try and think how we can make it easier for potential volunteers. So just very quickly, conclusions. So, I mean, societally, things are changing and people are changing, and that's impacting volunteering. And yeah, the book is a really good read. You can get it from Amazon. Those who donate time want to know it's well spent, work is organised and their contributions valued. How we can give our volunteers a great experience, and also promoting volunteering, really making sure that we're promoting it as a way, learning new skills, meeting new friends, valuable contribution to a cause, leading to employment, new careers. So yeah, really thinking at it and promoting it through a positive light. And there's loads of resources out there. I've just listed a few that could be really useful, and just trying to understand more about volunteering and what can be done. But yeah, happy to answer any questions. Has anybody got any examples of anything they may have done as a club or anything forward?
I was thinking it would be a good time to share any learnings or any things that you've got working well to help the other clubs would be really useful. For anyone out there, we're actually
Marcus come off mute.
Yeah, I just noticed it's the best time to speak with people, to engage people about volunteering is, well, not to mention the word volunteering to begin with, but when you're at an activity or if they're observing an activity and then they naturally want to be involved. That works. Rather than, a phone call or an email, when they're on activity, when they're really engaged and they can see what the results are. That works.
Yeah, absolutely. We tend to sort of, group volunteering is one thing, but I think definitely going through this research, we've just realised that it's just an extension of, it might be an extension of being a club member, or it might be an extension of just being involved in the activity. It's, linking it to that, I think is less daunting, isn't it, to a person getting involved. So yeah, absolutely. And when they're enthused in a positive mindset, like you talk about, Marco. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's really, really good advice. Anybody else or anything else?
Yeah, just to ask Mark, what's up the volunteers that he has working in the club, slaloms that he runs and things. Does he engage mostly with parents of paddlers?
Is that
Go on.
Was that to ask me?
Yeah, Mark, I noticed in a photograph of yours in the Canoe magazine the other week that I recognised a few parents sitting there. So really, you're engaging parents to do the jobs to enable the kids to paddle. Is that what you're doing generally?
Yeah, so in the slalom, when I run the timing systems for Wales, and what we try and do is engage with the parents to get the parents involved and feeding back into the sport. And what we're trying to find is that we can get them involved, and we get involved in other areas of the sport as well. And we got some parents that have gone in to do a bit of coaching as well and helping on the side. We then, once we try and get them involved, we try and get them into the judging as well and get them more involved in the sport. And then that would play a part all around the country then when they go to different races, and they can help and feed back into the sport that way. But I was going to say, since COVID, and it was interesting your slide there, Alistair, about the impact on COVID. Certainly, I'm on a working group on the National Slalom Committee as well, looking at volunteering. So it's quite interesting, your presentation tonight. I might take some of the slides back if you're happy with that, onto that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But what we've noticed is the number of volunteers since COVID, it's been decimated. We are struggling for volunteers, and there's a big program to try and get volunteers back into the slalom sport. And a lot of parents, whether it's the fear of the slalom side of things and making mistakes, I don't know. But the parents just seem to be hanging back. They don't want to be that involved these days, which is rather sad. So there's a big work group going on now to try and engage with more parents. And similar to what you said, Mark, in trying to get the parents more involved in the sport. And that's one thing I always try and do. And I will be shortly emailing all the clubs in Wales because we've got the races coming up. I'm doing the timing at 6 races around Wales, and I'm running several other races. To try and get the clubs engaged, to get parents of their paddlers committing and saying, come and have a go. We'll give you training. We're not going to shoot you down in flames. We're there to help you. We want you to engage with us and help us to develop the sport and feed into the sport.
Yeah, absolutely, Mark. I'm very happy to, to speak to you in the committee or similar. But yeah, I think fear of failure is a big thing now, and potential volunteers, particularly if the parents are coming from outside of paddling, that training needs to be really supportive to get to the point where they're confident to, or feel confident to volunteer. It's a bigger step, I think, now than it has been. But happy to chat about that, and maybe we can arrange a meeting or similar.
I'd like to second all that. The fear of failing is terrible, and nobody's going to put their hands up to go into anything this day and age. And it's getting worse, I think, because at a higher level, we are stopping them. We're criticising easier now than ever of failures. And it shouldn't happen, but it tends to. I can only blame ourselves for doing that. We should be supporting, as you've been saying, we should all supporting each other on it. However good or bad anybody does, they're helping out.
Yeah.
So, certainly at when they did the Olympics back in 2012, they did a huge volunteer program, and they engaged with some of the volunteers then for the subsequent Slalom World Cups held down at Lee Valley. And some of the volunteers from then are still coming back now because they're still engaged with the sport, and they actually travel around the country going and supporting events, which is fantastic, you know. But we just need they're in the retired people, and they really enjoy it. But it's trying to get the younger generation in to do that as well. I think that's what we've got the key focus on now, is trying to get them involved.
Yeah, absolutely. Brilliant. Okay, well, I'm going to hand back to Lydia because I think we might have gone a little bit over time, but yeah, thanks everyone, and happy to answer any questions or, you know, to go through anything. It's just been a little bit of a quick fly through tonight, but you know, there's plenty more there if anybody would like more information on any of that. Yeah, over to you, Lydia. Thanks.
Hi, I'm just gonna, there's just a thing in the chat here from Hannah that just says thanks, Alistair, and she's wondering if maybe part of it is that people don't know that they can get involved, you know, and making it aware in your clubs that, you know, we are open and we are, you know, willing to let you come along, and maybe, yeah, people would like to get involved but don't know it's an option. So that's a really good point, I think. Sorry, yeah. Hannah's just on, I can't come off mute, so she's just,
yeah, absolutely. It really links back to that ability side, and one of the four ability factors, if you like, is good communication. So yeah, I think it's the club absolutely making sure that, you know, potential volunteers know about the opportunities, and yeah, know that volunteering is a part of club membership at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a very good point, Mike. Thank you very much, Alistair, for that. We're going to hand over to Bonnie. So again, we'll do a similar thing. Bonnie's going to give you lots of amazing tips, because we know Bonnie's brilliant at social media in your club and how we can use social media to help your clubs out. And then again, there'll be lots of time for questions at the end, which I know Bonnie will willingly answer for you. If anybody thinks of anything again for Alistair during it, just put it in the chat and we can address it at the end. So over to Bonnie is our marketing and communications manager. So over to Bonnie.
Hi, hello everyone. Some of you I have met before, some of you I haven't. So nice to see some familiar faces. If you haven't touched base with me yet and you need some help marketing wise, please feel free to get in touch with me at Canoe Wales. I'm also really happy to share these slides, and obviously if anyone's got any questions as we're going along, please feel free to speak up and ask away. So a little bit about me. I've been working at Canoe Wales now for 6 months. I come from primarily working since my 30s, so for the last 20 odd years I've worked at Facebook, Wayra, at Telefonica. I've worked in startups and things like that, all around marketing and SEO. So predominantly working on how people can get growth out of social media, as well as Google and other extensions and browsers and things like that. So hopefully this will help some of you. And really what I've tried to do is address a lot of the questions that I get asked quite frequently about clubs, especially if I'm out visiting clubs. So a lot of the time people say they don't know where to start. So I either come across two types of clubs or coaches and paddlers, and it's usually one that they're not very predominant on social media at all, or that they already have something going on social media and they're not sure where to go from there. So those kind of issues that people have kind of go down two different pathways. A lot of the time people say, right, we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn, but we're just not growing. And sometimes people will say, well, I'm just on Facebook and that's it. And, you know, we've got a group going and that's kind of fine, but we're not sure where to go from there. So general rule of thumb is that you need to use 2 social media platforms to get any kind of growth coming into your club. Down to you to choose which ones, but Facebook is generally one of the best, primarily because it targets communities. And there's nothing better than having a ready-made community at hand for you in Facebook. So you can use several platforms if you want. However, when you do that, your information kind of gets diluted down a bit more. So hence why we say try and stick to 1 or 2 platforms only. Regular posting can be quite a conundrum. Sometimes people will say to you that you need to post every day, and others will say I've only got time to post once a week, let alone once a day. So it's all really good stuff. But if you want to keep growing your club, you're going to need to go that tiny bit extra mile. And what some clubs have started doing is actually taking on a volunteer to kind of run with their marketing. And that's someone who will help oversee Facebook, maybe put Instagram on their phone to take pictures and things like that, any of the paddles or the pool sessions, and all those kind of things. And we're seeing from that volunteer that usually then they start taking on the process of looking at your databases, making sure any email newsletters go out and all those kind of things. But this is kind of a way to say you need to pull it together more and make it a lot tighter, particularly if you're looking at a substantial amount of growth within your club. Yeah, so volunteers is awesome. Thank you, Alistair. And it's kind of key now that you have possibly a volunteer in your group or club that's going to take on some of the marketing side for you. Another question I get asked is Facebook pages versus groups. And I know quite a few clubs that just have a group and quite a few clubs that just use a Facebook page. There's no right or wrong here. However, if you want to share personal information, anything like the club's opening hours, where you're going to be, open days, you know, new intakes, volunteer intakes, where new people can come along and possibly sign up and all that kind of stuff, then the Facebook page works really, really well because it will attract outside of what a group can reach. Groups are really great because they can connect people together where you can have discussions, but they don't actually help you with growth because it relies on somebody knowing your kayaking club name to be able to actually find you. So the best solution would actually be to have a Facebook page and attach a group to it, specifically if you're targeting growth and you want new paddlers coming in and new volunteers coming in. This is primarily because Facebook pages are built like websites, so they will attract people in, whereas groups are very closed and people won't always be able to find them if they don't know your name or if they don't know you exist in the first place. That will always rely on word of mouth or them stumbling on your website online and then your website having a link to your Facebook page. And that's an awfully long way or journey for a customer to go. We all remember everyone's on Facebook. The best thing about Facebook is it's one of the first things people do when they're going on social media is they go straight to Facebook and they'll do searches within Facebook as opposed to going on to Google Chrome, Safari, Firefox, any of those. They will tend to look for things in Facebook. So if it's all in one place and it's really easy for someone to find, then that's a pretty good start. So growing groups. I often get asked about growing groups. So there are a number of Facebook tools to help you to set up your group so that people can try and find your group. And it all evolves around using keywords and SEO, which probably sounds more complicated than it actually is. There are other tools there that help you brand your community. And when we talk about branding community, there's a couple of key things in there. So you're looking at your logo for your club, which would be part of your brand. You're looking at the rules that you set up within your group that's going to be part of your brand. And those rules might be, you know, it's a positive group. We keep everything that we talk about relevant. You know, we don't tolerate any online bullying, all those kind of things. All of that can be part of your brand because that's seen as being a good, safe and supportive community. Cross-promoting your group is another way of getting seen, although you have to be careful because in some other groups, they don't like you advertising. There's a group, quite a large group called Slightly Whitewater Kayaking on Facebook, and they have a no advertising policy within the group. However, if somebody who's new to the group pops up and says, "Hi guys, just joined, does anyone know of a club near Cardiff that I can take my 14-year-old along to?" That's probably one of the main questions that comes out in the summer is everyone wants to get on the water, they don't know how to do it, and they have no idea how to find groups. So cross-promoting works really well if you can post as a page as opposed to just sticking a link there as Joe blogs. Maintaining a strong community culture, I think, is really important across all social media. And it's one of those things that is continuously talked about within health and well-being, safety, especially online safety. So the kind of culture that you want to bring to your community and enforce and elevate is always around that positivity, that can-do attitude. The kind of community where members feel embodied to be able to post that they went to your pool session last night and they had a really great time, and they might not have actually cracked how to do a roll yet, but they're going to go back next week and they're going to nail it. And that kind of strong community culture is really, really good to capture. And it's encouraging members to actually post within the Facebook group themselves. So you have then a timeline of lots of news stories coming out directly from your community, who are the paddlers in your group. And always welcoming your newest members in your group. So each week you might have 5 or 6 new members that join the group. There's a really handy little button on the Facebook community group, and it tells you how many members have joined this week, and it actually prompts you to share a good story that says, "Hi, welcome to our newest members, X, Y, and Z." So there are lots of really great tools within Facebook groups that are already set up there for you and will prompt you as you're running your group. So don't ignore the prompts. The prompts are there for a reason and they're free to use. And I've put at the bottom of the slide for this one, for growing groups, there is a Facebook page called Community, and it lists all of these points plus many more, and it walks you through how to actually do them. And that's free training that Facebook provides itself. It's a lot more in depth, and Facebook has its own training platform, which is really, really good. So growing a Facebook page, people hate starting pages off from scratch because it means they have no likes, no shares, no friends, no followers. But we've all got to start somewhere, and actually a Facebook page is a really good way of establishing yourself as a brand. There are so many brands on Facebook now, and the great thing about it is that it doesn't matter if you're Coca-Cola or if you're a small community network, your branding is all stripped away and everyone looks the same on Facebook, which is a really great bonus. So the best thing about having a Facebook page is that it's almost built exactly like a website, but it's completely free to use. You have tabs that are set up within your page that respond and work exactly the same way as a website page would work. And you have unique links that you can go to each tab, as opposed to sending everyone straight to your front page of your Facebook page. So it's really, really interesting that if you actually delve deeper into the settings of your Facebook page, you're actually able to customize the way that your template looks. And that's very similar to how you would work with a website. So you can share your page in your personal feed. You can invite friends and family to like your page to give you that lift off from zero. You can ask friends to share your page with their networks. I mean, we're paddlers. There are so many paddlers around. And if you ask one paddler to share a page, they'll all happily do so. The kayaking community rocks. And that's one of the great things about being able to grow your page really quickly across Facebook. You can post as a page in groups where allowed. So instead of posting as yourself, as Joe Blogs, you can actually post it as the page. You can share a ton of more content within pages than you can from groups. And you can directly manage communication through the inbox. The other thing about Facebook Messenger, which is the inbox, is you've got an automatic assistant there all set up for you that will take your messages and greet people while they write to you, even if you're not sat at the computer or your mobile phone or desktop. So there are quite a few functions in there that actually say, you know, sorry, we're not actually at the computer right now, but we will get back to you tomorrow morning when we're logged back in again. So you can also post when your audience is online. So when you have a Facebook page, you have a whole heap of more analytics that will tell you when your customers or paddlers or parents or family members are all actually online, and it tells you where they are, who they are, what time they're on, when they're logging in, when they're logging out, what they looked at, and all those kind of things. And all that information is completely free when you actually have a Facebook page, and that enables you to use that growth to then direct people to your group. So you can continuously feed from Facebook page into a Facebook group, and that's why having two running side by side works really well when you're trying to go through larger amounts of growth. Another thing that a lot of people aren't aware of is there are two WhatsApp apps. One is called WhatsApp Business, and the other one is just called WhatsApp. Now, a lot of us use WhatsApp. It's free, we're all using it for messaging. But the other app, which is WhatsApp Business, it works in exactly the same way, but you sign up and you have a business profile. So the profile isn't you, Joe Blogs, it's your company. And what happens is that when you have people signing up, or when you have club members that join up and you get their telephone numbers, you can actually share the information from your business or your club or your centre directly across WhatsApp to those people that are signed up to your services already. And this is great. These sort of tools work really, really well when you need to try and fill spaces for slots you might have open, when you've got courses that you're advertising, when you want everyone to be responsive to an event where everyone might be meeting up one day to go for a paddle and things like that. And the good thing about this is you can send messages out that go out to every individual, or you can do group messaging. And because it lets you set up as a business, say, for example, you have a couple of slots that become available at a paddling event, you can always send this out from your business as opposed to using your personal WhatsApp. So it takes away you having to manage and maintain a WhatsApp group, and it puts the onus back onto the business. So it's a really, really cool app that's got lots of features and works really well for clubs. I've seen some clubs that are using it at the moment for their pool sessions. So if they have some availability still left the day before or on the morning of the pool sessions, they're able to send out a message through the WhatsApp business app, and people can directly sign up and those places go automatically then, which works really well. So they're not having to reply to people to say, yes, we've got 2 spaces. People can just directly click on the link and take those spaces up. That's if you have spaces at your pool sessions. So there are tons of free tools to use, and I don't want to bog you down too much, but there are things like Facebook Scheduler. So if you want to send out posts from your Facebook page, you can use Facebook Scheduler to write all your posts out for Instagram and Facebook, and you can schedule them. So you can schedule them to go out next week, next month, next year. So if you've got an hour to yourself and you think, right, I've got some key messages that really need to go out over the next few weeks, you can sit there and use the pre-scheduler and schedule them all to go out at different times, different days. You can also schedule them to go out to different audiences. So you might have a message that you want to go out to parents only, or you might have a message that you want to go out to team members only, all those kind of things. So a lot of that's changing, and Facebook used to use Content Creator and Creative Studio, and now that's moved away and it's called Content Only. Canva is really awesome for making posters and graphics for posts, and you can use your whole team to have a look at a flyer, get them to sign it off, or ask people to comment, give ideas, all those kind of things. Most clubs I have worked with over the last few years have been using MailChimp, and it works really well because you always have quite a small number of people that you're messaging out. And when I say small, I generally mean under 1,000. So MailChimp works really well that way. Google My Business. So for you, those of you who have a club that's registered, or a business, if you're a coach, any of those kind of things, then you should have a Google My Business profile. Once you have a Google My Business profile, you can actually build a website, web page from it, and you can list your services. You can also do posts from it as well, a little bit like Facebook, and that goes across all platforms. So whenever anyone is looking for something in Google, whether it's an address, a telephone number, or a business, it will pull all that information together for you. Facebook Pixel is something that's a little more detailed. It's a pixel that you can add to your website for analytics. It gives you more detailed analytics. So it tells you who has come from Facebook to your website page to have a look at what's going on, where they came from, where they're going to next. So if they've landed on your website, where they've gone after your website, it tells you what their interests are, what sort of things they're searching for, and all those kind of things. It's quite fun because it breaks it down on male and female groups. It also breaks down the ages for you and where in the country they are as well. Then there's Google Pixel, which will track everything happening on your website, which is an absolute must if you have a website. Granted, it's a little bit difficult to get your head around, but there is a free training platform that tells you how to use it. And then obviously WhatsApp for business. So there's quite a few resources and training that you can have a look at that's completely free. Obviously Facebook and Instagram has its own training platform. One of the things I did want to mention is that Facebook also has a training platform for parents, and it has a training platform for children. And what it does for the parents is it shows them how to keep their children safe online. It shows them how to lock down accounts if they need to, and it shows them how they can monitor what their children are doing online as well. And then the children's platform that it has for training is a platform that's quite video based. It tells children how to identify bullying and how to understand that people may not be who they seem to be. And it's a really good way of kind of just taking those first steps. So with some of the parents we work with in the slalom world are just turning sort of 11, 12, 13. And they're not currently yet on social media. However, their club is, their peers are, and all those kind of things. So it's a really great platform to help parents have those first conversations with the kids. WhatsApp for Business also has a training platform, and HubSpot have a really good platform knowledge of setting people up with TikTok accounts. Canva has a step-by-step guide to designing anything that you want. And MailChimp has a 101 guide for building newsletters, as well as being able to create web pages within MailChimp now. So you can create a landing page within MailChimp if you don't have a website, and that's completely free to do as well. So, does anyone have any questions? And it doesn't have to be about the PowerPoint. General questions around social media and your club and growth are absolutely fine and more than welcome.
The WhatsApp business, is that still linked to one specific phone number, or can that be shared between multiples?
No, it's still linked to one phone number. So what people have been doing is just using kind of a very cheap phone with maybe a pay-as-you-go SIM or something like that, and actually putting that onto it there.
But then that would basically still mean only one person who's got that phone sort of can access that. So
yes, at the moment that will change because obviously it's been bought out by Meta. So they are looking at business profile sharing. So hopefully that'll crop up within the next 12 months.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I was going to ask about online child protection, and if you've got a Facebook page, you're taking photographs of kids going kayaking, I guess. So how's that affected?
Well, that's quite a big one, and something Kath would probably be better answering than myself because she's dealing with the online safety. It is a difficult conversation, but it's one that has to be had within clubs and with your safeguarding officer. If you have members within a group that are posting up pictures, then it's really good to set the standard right at the very start and maybe have within your group community a set of rules, and that could say that, you know, we're agreeing not to put pictures up of children under a certain age within the group. If it's a Facebook page, then that responsibility has to sit again quite clearly with the page. It's not something you can stop others from doing, but it's certainly down to how you decide your community and your group nurtures that environment.
Just on that with the posting of images, so what we do in Cardiff Canoe Club is, for example, any sessions we have at the start when we do our briefing about water safety and what we're going to do and stuff, we also ask if everyone's happy for photographs to be taken and to be used to promote the club, and anyone who is not, we'll try and make sure to the best of our ability to not have them in those images then. And the parents are made aware that images might be taken as well. Same for beginners courses. We've got a form they have to fill out beforehand, and they can consent to photography or decline.
Thank you, Anna. Is there any other questions? Okay, just to say, we are planning the roadshow dates, and I know Lydia will talk more about that, but I will be out and about at the roadshow as well. So if anyone has any specific needs or anything like that, come and see me at the roadshow, or feel free to email me.
So can I just ask, Question quickly.
Yes.
Just because I don't know any of this, but can you link a Facebook page from a website? Can you try and do them so that one will do something with the other, or do you have to have somebody doing them separately?
Separately, unfortunately.
Right. Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any more questions, or there's probably going to be things you're going to think of. If you're anything like me, you'll get off the call and you'll go, oh, I wish I asked that. All our email addresses are on our website, so feel free to message any of us at any point about any of these things. I think most of you will have my email address and have contacted me, so I can always put things in the right direction. So don't feel like if you haven't asked it tonight, then it's a one-time thing. It's obviously absolutely not. We are actually slightly ahead of time. I'm not sure you'll mind that too much, so a couple of things. So Bonnie has mentioned the road shows, so we are just in the starting planning the road shows for this year. So basically watch this space and you'll get emails drop in about the road shows. And again, there'll be all different departments there, and a good chance to ask the questions that you want to ask. Similarly, if there is anything that you've got a burning issue to know about, drop me an email and I'll see if I can add it in. These road shows are for you guys, so we want to be there giving the information and the learnings of the things that will be really helpful for your club. So please feel free to drop anything on an email to me, and so we can include it in the road shows. Would be wonderful. And then we've got our second and final webinar in 2 weeks today. So that one is going to be, we've got a performance section, which is going to be very much about how performance can help your club and how your club can help performance, because I know there's a lot about children being removed from clubs, which nobody wants, but also giving children the opportunity to try these things. And we've obviously got our new performance manager, Nick. He's been here a little while now, but it'll be a really good chance to meet him, learn about his vision and how he's going to work with clubs. So that'll be a really useful one. And I'm also going to be speaking about the Sports Wales grant. I know the Be Active Fund grant a lot of clubs have applied for, but it is a yearly thing, so you can apply every year. We've had some really good learnings coming at the moment. I'd like to share with you some really good grants, because you guys probably don't really see what other clubs put in for. So I'll be sharing with you some big grants that have gone through and been accepted, why they've been accepted, what are the things that are helping clubs that they're being funded for. So we will send another email around if you haven't booked on and you want the booking details for that. Similarly, I believe you can just find it on our website. Bonnie, is that correct? Yeah, I thought you could. Yeah, so that'll be in 2 weeks' time. But yeah, thank you very much for all attending tonight. I don't know if you've got any final questions, anyone, before we say good night. No. Well, it was lovely to see you all. It always is. Nice to see faces as well. I get names on emails, so it's lovely to put the faces to those names, which is nice. But thanks all for coming then, and hopefully we'll catch you all in 2 weeks' time at the next webinar. So thanks very much, Bonnie and Alistair, for speaking, and we'll see you all soon.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks again.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.